Hello, my lovelies, and welcome back. Another day. I don't know if this will drop Friday, most likely, but let's say another day, another fabulous guest. Today, I have Corey Olsen here, who I'm personally a really, really big fan of. I'll have all the links and descriptions of everything that Corey does, so it will be a lot. It's like a book, a small book down below here. But Corey, introduce yourself. Who are you? Where can people find you? And yes.
Yeah, so I'm Corey Olsen. I'm known as a Tolkien Professor. I've been running the Tolkien Professor podcast for many years now, about 12 years now, and I'm president of Signum University.
Exactly. And I can only recommend people. So if you're interested in fantasy literature, Tolkien's, like it's not just about Tolkien. You have a lot of variations and topic. I
Mhm.
think I recently discovered that you're also doing something about, I think like Old Germanic or North
Yes,
literature.
yes, we are. Yeah, in
Mhm,
fact, we're teaching a class on Old Saxon
mhm,
language
mhm.
this semester. So that's
Yeah.
this coming semester.
Yeah. So anybody who's interested in that has time on the side, next to working, you totally can do that. I promised Corey on our last interview we did with Dan. I promised him one day I'll do that, when I'm not as busy with work. But yeah, no, I can only recommend it. It's really interesting stuff you don't find in, let's say, like a regular boring, like whatever you're studying, like normal English literature and stuff like that, which I did, like
Right.
it's really good. Okay, people, so today we're here actually. I got Tori to talk about Corey. Tori, hi Tori, Corey to talk about one of my favorite topics, and that is Númenor. And I thought about, I did a lot, I covered a lot of grounds on Númenor already, but one of my personal favorite topics is talking about the queens and what is wrong with these ruling queens, or kind of refusing to rule queens of Númenor, and if there
Hmm.
was any intent. And we talk about that most of the time, but there was a lot of things happening, Corey, in the Tolkien verse. Yeah. So let's talk maybe about Lenny Henry, who apparently is confirmed. We still don't know. Amazon hasn't said yes, it will happen, and he's a comedian over here in Europe, in England.
Hmm.
So who knows? Is is it even true? But yeah, he said, and he teased he will play a Hobbit, but we have a second aid show. So, Corey, what is happening there? What are your thoughts?
So it's a really interesting move. I mean, on the one hand, you'd think it makes a certain amount of sense from an entertainment standpoint, that like that one of the downfalls of or the drawbacks, I guess perhaps I should say, of a second age based show is no hobbits, right? Um and so they're going to put that in, but now here's the thing. We know nothing. Like nothing at all about what I mean, when did hobbits start? Like, what was the beginning of hobbits? What was the origin of hobbits? We have
Mm,
no idea, none whatsoever. I mean, the very first thing that we hear about them, that is like the oldest thing that we hear about them, it was when it's from chapter 2 of Fellowship of the Ring, when Gandalf is telling Frodo about he utters the sentence concerning their origins, at least, about that is hobbits origins, that he knows more than hobbits do themselves. But he doesn't
mhm,
tell us anything about their origin. He just tells us that there was a point a long time back when they
yeah,
lived in the Gladden, when they were living over near the Gladden Fields. In
mhm.
other words, he's setting up Gollum's backstory.
He did,
But
yeah.
Gollum's backstory is like, hundreds of years ago, not thousands of
No,
years ago, not back in the second age.
yeah.
So what exactly are the origins? Like that phrase, the origins of hobbits, right, is
Mhm,
something that gets alluded to, but we never really know. I mean, they're obviously connected to humans, right? I
mhm.
mean, that is metaphysically connected to
Yes.
humans, like
Yeah.
that. So but like something happened, like at some
Mhm,
point something
mhm.
happened. We don't know. I can't, I mean, knowing Tolkien, it is very hard to imagine that he is basically implying that there was some kind of slow and arbitrary evolutionary process that
Mm,
brought about hobbits, but we have no idea what
no.
other process brought them about or when that happened.
Yeah.
So there's no reason to, so on the one hand, do we have any record of hobbits in the Second Age? No. Do we have any reason to think there weren't hobbits in the Second Age? No. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
And the one line that I think of, which is really kind of interesting and kind of appealing, which is that hobbits um, hobbits have been around a long time
Yeah.
and have done a lot of things, but they never usually get any credit for it in the the historical records. So hey, all right,
Yeah.
let's
Which
set
was
the record
mainly
straight
made
on
by
that one.
elves during that time,
Right,
right? Still in the second. I mean,
exactly.
yes, the Númenóreans obviously did, but I mean, they had their colonies in Middle Earth
Right,
during the Second Age, but not that many. Mainly in a complete different area. They were nowhere near the River Anduin, where the hobbits
right.
originated. So it would be weird. I mean, there's Mirkwood, obviously, these elves from over there, like Thranduil's father, after the fall of Beleriand, probably
Right.
met hobbits. And we know, and I find this interesting because this is also the time, that when the Northmen then became the Rohirrim, basically. And it is said somewhere, don't quote me, but I read it in some of the wider legendarium, one of the 1,000 books that are out there besides the Lord of the Ring and the Silmarillion. And I think the Rohirrim, and I think even I don't remember where it's said in Return of the King. I don't really know, but the Rohirrim have similar words,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
So they kind of knew, and they have old legends of the hobbits.
Right.
So he hints at, and with the hobbits, themselves, who talked about evolution, human evolution, right? The hobbits themselves, there are three different, it's not races, it's more like tribes. I don't, yeah, I
Yeah.
would,
Something
yeah,
like tribes. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And they look different, and they have different abilities, they have different heights and all that. So this also
Right.
hints at, yes, they come from humans, and even them, being very close, the three tribes of them, the Hartfoots, the Fellowhides, and the Stores, they
Right.
already look different, but it's still the Hobbit. So it's interesting, and I find it fascinating. I'm okay, and I do think from a visual and storytelling point of view, it is nice to have something people feel connected to and know. If you literally start in a complete fantasy world on an island nobody except us nerds has ever heard of before, and
Right.
and Eregion, and the Gwaith and all these, and people are like, what? But I have no idea what is this world. So you give them something. Why did Tolkien start in the Shire? He wants you to to feel comfortable before he brings all the fantasy
Yes.
aspects.
And that actually is a really interesting element. I don't know how they're going to use them. Right? I don't know what the effect of the
No.
hobbits, what their role is going to be in this story,
Yeah.
but it is a really interesting possibility, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because one of the things that is one of the things you can see throughout the Lord of the Rings, certainly, is the hobbits are, as you were suggesting, they're our framework, right? That's
Yeah.
where we kind of connect, right? We
Yeah.
look, Merry and Pippin and Sam and Frodo in the eyes, we're looking up like they are at
Yeah.
Gandalf and Aragorn and
Yeah.
the big people, right?
Yeah.
The heroic figures that
Yeah.
we could kind of hope, perhaps, if we're
Mhm.
truly awesome, to be like
Yeah.
Sam, or like Frodo or Merry and
Yeah.
Pippin. But the others are kind of not on our level.
No.
So I wonder, are we? I mean, it's hard for me to imagine we're going to get hobbits present enough in the story of
Yeah.
Numenor and
No.
Celebrimbor and everything
No.
else that
The
we're going to really
contrast.
achieve that. But maybe, I mean, maybe they will be some kind of like touchstone for us, because it
Mhm.
is true. I mean, goodness, if the Lord of the Rings involves all of these heroic figures,
Yeah.
and we're going back to Celebrimbor and Gilgalad, and good
Mhm.
grief, those are the people that, like, Aragorn and Gandalf and people in the later Third Age are like,
Yeah.
oh, those were the great heroes that nobody's like them anymore. So I mean, they are to, like, as far as heroes and
Yeah. Yeah.
abilities and everything, they are
Yeah.
to like Aragorn what Aragorn was to the hobbits practically. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the way we're kind of taught in the Lord of the Rings to look back at these guys. So
Yeah.
it is one kind of risk in doing this version of this story, is that now we have to, we as viewers have to, on some level, kind of become comfortable walking among the giants of legend, right? Which is
Exactly.
awesome,
Yeah.
but it's also risky from a
Yeah.
storytelling
Yeah.
standpoint. So the introduction of hobbits is fascinating on that level. And if they're
Yeah.
going to be trying to kind of mitigate that in some
Yeah.
way, I wonder.
Yeah. And Tolkien stories is always, yes, it's stories about wars. It's stories, when you look at the Silmarillion, it's about literally a family
Hmm.
fighting children of
Hmm.
Hurin. This is the downfall of a human family and all that. But the Hobbits, this is like the homely. What are the Hobbits fighting for? They're
Right.
fighting for home, right? And this is, during a lot of, he was a warrior, right? He lived during and fought during the First World War. He thought about this, his home, right? This is what Sam always tells us. And I think that aspect in a show, which we will have lots of battles, we will have, battles at sea and all that, but you need that aspect to still feel a bit grounded. Like this is
Right.
what you said before. So I like that. I have nothing against it. I'm not going into the discussions if we have black or Maori hobbits. I don't give a F, like this is cinematic, right? This is not the books. People, relax.
Well,
um
yeah, and on that level, I mean, this is something that I've said before, but
mhm,
even as far as the treatment of the books themselves,
mhm,
there seems to me to be a genuine tension
mhm,
between the people that Tolkien imagined and the world that Tolkien imagined,
yeah,
right? I mean,
yeah.
it is clearly does seem to be true that the majority of the people that he imagined, most of the people like him and like
But
his
he
target
wanted to
audience.
write a mythology for England. Why would
He
he, like, there are no Maoris, in the history?
exactly. That was very much his own imaginative
Yeah,
framework. But when he imagined the world, he
yeah.
was imagining the world. So I said, there's a real tension there, because on the one
Mhm,
hand, the example I most frequently use is Prince Imrahil, right?
mm,
Prince Imrahil, he imagines Prince Imrahil as white. That's clear. I mean,
mhm,
from the description we get of him, it's pretty clear that he's white. But then Tolkien goes, and he's describing the world,
mhm,
and basically, Dol Amroth is about the latitude of Morocco,
mhm.
right? Is about where Dol Amroth is, right?
Yeah,
So, you know, if you wanted to depict,
yeah,
so basically when you're kind of when you're trying to dramatize this, when you're trying to adapt this onto the
yeah.
screen, you have to kind of choose, because
Mhm.
what that the mythology for England thing kind of projected over the
Yeah,
world, essentially, right, that Tolkien was doing,
it's
it doesn't actually work, right? It
no,
doesn't actually work. The
no.
people of Gondor especially would be, and especially of southern Gondor and everything,
Mhm.
would not be white skinned.
No,
And so
no.
yeah, like, you can say like, oh, you're deviating from the text if you just, like, try to make
Yeah,
introduce
yeah.
multi-ethnic actors, but that's not actually true. It
No,
doesn't
it's not.
deviate from the world that he
No,
imagined in
no.
that in that other way. As I said, there's a real tension there, which means there are legitimate choices that you
Yes,
have to make, and be still working within the framework.
the
My
framework, yeah.
only my only quick thought about simply, if they are thoughtful about it, right? I dislike the kind of multiracial casting which just tries to sort of ignore story
Yeah,
entirely, right? Like,
yeah.
to give like an extreme example, like where you've got like 3 or 4 siblings in a family, all of whom seem to be like wildly different,
Mhm.
wildly different ethnic background, like
What
that
has
kind
the
of thing.
mum been doing?
I know, it's like, seriously, it kind of gets me outside of, I mean, like, so
Yeah,
when you try to do that, right? Like,
yeah,
oh, look, there's like different people all over the place with no,
yeah.
like, no logic at all, right?
No.
No kind of sense of story or sense of world building, which is really important to
Yes.
Tolkien's world, right? That
Yeah,
there should be some
yeah.
kind of internal consistency there. So if there's like a reason,
Yeah.
right? What again, we know so little about the history of hobbits. Some
Yeah,
of them could very well have, and as you said, he talks about physical differences that
yes.
have emerged among the different tribes of hobbits. Well, like, okay, so and maybe some of them, we have no idea. So
No.
I'm fine with that.
Mhm.
I have no problem with that at all. If that's done kind of like thoughtfully and consistently, and as a part of their
Yeah.
adapted building of Middle Earth, I think that can work very well and be perfectly fine.
I'm with you there. And remember what he taught us about Numenor, and you see that in many ways when a lot of artists picture Numenorian kings, it is a bit like Egypt. It has Egyptian vibes. This is what he even said, right?
Hmm.
And I find that
Hmm.
fascinating. So again, it's
And
not.
it's located like on the equator, Luminor. So yes.
No, yes, it's true.
Yeah.
And yeah. So again, we're not going too deep into this, but I think from what I hear from you and what I've heard before, you're totally fine, with yes, bring hobbits into the second age. First, cinematic wise, it makes sense. And it doesn't speak against the law. There's no proof, but there's again no, nobody says nah, it's not possible.
Oh
And
man,
they
there's
need to
so
come
much
from
freedom.
somewhere.
Yeah, and there's so much freedom in the second age. I mean, seriously, we know so little
Yeah.
about the second age
Yes.
that it's really hard for anybody to be like, "Oh, that totally didn't happen in the second." We have no idea what happened in the second
Yeah.
age most of the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
And I love this topic about, they don't exist in Elvish law. Maybe they tell us why. Because, yes, this
yeah,
show will be based mainly about, but this is a lot about, Bilbo wrote his book, started the Red Book of Westmarch. And then you have Frodo continuing, and even Sam and a lot of the other hobbits then continuing these books. And it is interesting because actually the hobbits tell us all these stories, but then you go back in time and it's like, okay, so who's that? I maybe they are thoughtful and introduce this this element of the story. Who's writing this story? Who's narrating? And maybe now
yes,
we come to the second part of, we're still not talking about Numenorian queens, but we will. People, relax. But let's talk about a bloody blurry picture again for a last time. So we
sure,
watched. I was on, he's a good friend of mine who does a lot of leaks and stuff like that, Fellowship of Fans. And he
yeah,
has
yes, yes,
really, yeah, so Fellowship has really good sources at Amazon who always drop him this and that. And it is kind of confirmed, although it's not by Amazon, but it is confirmed it's Finrod. So I find that fascinating because, first of all, I mean, the line of Finarfin, I mean, I'm more of a Fingolfin stan, but
hmm,
still, the line of Finarfin, these are the clever ones, so,
yes, yes.
so that brings so many possibilities. And I said I will link the video you did about this topic because you had some thoughts on it as well.
Oh man, it is
Let
such a fascinating question. I mean,
I
it really
know.
is. Like, what the heck with Finrod? Because, look, I would love to believe. In some ways, I would love to. I mean, people kept saying when that dropped. When that news dropped, people were all like, "Oh my goodness, does this mean we're gonna get X, Y, and Z?" Like, this is what people are always thinking. Like, does this mean we're gonna get the story of, like
It's
basically
not fast age.
no, it's not first age. I mean, it is first age. That picture is first age, like straight up first age, right? So,
Yes.
yeah, we're going to get some of the first stage.
Yeah.
It would seem very likely, almost certainly in flashback. But
Yeah.
that
Or years
brings,
of the trees, most likely before
yeah,
they fled, right? So yeah.
exactly, exactly. But that brings up the question: why are we flashing back to Finrod in the first age? Like, who's flashing back to Finrod in the first stage?
Yeah.
Because there's the connections between Finrod specifically and
Yeah.
the second age
Yeah.
are tenuous. I mean, he was gone. I mean, he dies during the Beren and
Do you,
Luthien story.
do you think, but he was not gone in thought because he's the link between humanity, first of all,
Hmm.
and the bloody ring. His
And
bloody ring
the ring, yeah.
survives literally
Hmm.
everything. He survives the downfall of Numenor. He survives, in Losloth when the snowman, like
Yeah,
literally,
yeah,
like
yeah,
the drowning of the ship of Arvedui. Like
yeah,
he
yeah.
survives till the third age on the hand, on the
On
finger of
the
Aragon. Like that
right.
bloody ring has seen it all.
It's
Um,
true.
and
It's
and
true.
Galadriel is still alive. She was his
Yeah.
sister. He's the
She's the
eldest of
she's
the
the living
line.
link. Yeah, she's the living link back to Finrod. And if there's a person who is having a flashback and remembering Finrod in the
Yeah,
first stage, I
yeah,
mean, like it's almost got to be Galadriel, right?
yeah,
I mean, who else would even be doing that?
yeah.
I mean, I was kind of going through and thinking about second age people,
Yeah,
right? And
you
I'm like,
said, yeah,
did any of them have a relationship with Finrod? How many of them even ever saw the trees? I mean, there's a very
yeah,
small number of,
yeah.
named folks who were there in Valinor with the trees who were still around in the Second Age. Galadriel is top of that list, of course,
Yeah.
Finrod's brother. So that almost has to be suggest that. But so, yeah, like, why
And
is
he's the link
she?
to Sauron. Look, this will
Yeah,
be Sauron will be again, but we will learn so much more. He's not just some evil, entity anymore. He will be
right.
fleshed out. He will be Anatar for a really long time. He will have, a fair form during this time, and you need to. You need to set him up. You need to explain what did he do before he did this. And I really do think this will be what Finrod, because he's the link. Galadriel, her brother got killed by this dude, and they will probably meet in Eregion, and there will be,
Right.
with the guild, with Celebrimbor, there will be this, yeah.
Yep. No, I think that's, and I agree, that's going to be a really fun element of the show. The
Mm-hmm.
character of Sauron is going to be a really fun element of the show.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really looking forward to a Sauron who is not just a flaming eyeball. Um,
No.
I mean, the kind of remote role that Sauron plays in the Lord of the Rings, right? I mean, he
Yeah.
is the Dark Lord who's, malice from
We know
afar.
nothing
We feel
about
right.
him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just yeah, the Dark Lord who's ruling and who stays in Barad-dûr, and he is this ever-present menace, and
Mm-hmm.
it's really effective for storytelling purposes,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you
Yeah.
contrast how effective Sauron is as a bad guy, right, compared to, say, Voldemort in the Harry Potter movies, right, who
Mm-hmm.
becomes much less scary by the end because we get to know him like a little too well in some
Yeah.
ways. We get a little too familiar with
Yeah.
him. We see
Mm-hmm.
him like lose too often, right?
Yeah.
And we kind of, at least I find myself losing respect for Voldemort as the great enemy, by the end of the last book, which is part of what's supposed to be. I mean, I don't. They're not trying to do the same things, the Harry Potter story and the Lord of the Rings story, and it's part of what I know the Harry Potter books are kind of going for, is that
Mm-hmm.
we're not supposed to be terrified of Voldemort by the very end. But anyway, I
Yeah.
but there is that danger, right? There is the danger
Mm-hmm.
that with familiarity and getting to know his
Yeah.
personality, he's going to be less sort of awesome and
Yeah.
terrifying as the Dark Lord at the end.
Yeah.
But the Anatar element is the thing which I think is really kind of changes that dynamic, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, to be able to see him actually manipulating folks and seeing his desires, I think it should be fun. I'm really
Mm-hmm.
really looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh my God, totally. I hope they don't play too much on this um sexual aspect that is in there, because a lot of people misunderstand what some words, words Tolkien used, something like pity. A lot of these words, they changed over time. Our words
Hmm.
today are completely, they have a different meaning.
Yes.
And I was recently re-listening to one of you, because people, Corey does something epic. Corey goes through the Lord of the Ring books, and he is, I don't know, I'm still in Rivendell
There
with
we go.
you.
So am I.
So,
So am
good. I have
I.
so maybe till the end of his life, Corey is secretly a Númenorian king, so he'll have a very blessed long life. So 300, 400 years, expect this. Maybe we'll get
Yeah,
to the end, and Corey can do
maybe
it.
we
No,
will.
but you also very often explain, these changes of the meanings of the words,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And I just hope they don't misinterpret this seductive aspect, because this is seduction happens in talking with your voice. by
Right.
singing, by
Right.
this is a magical element. It's has nothing to do
It's not
with
really a sexual thing at all. Yeah, yeah,
no,
exactly.
no, no.
It's more like it's more. I mean, the comparison I made in class there, it's more like what the Emperor is trying to do to Luke Skywalker in the
Yeah,
Return of the Return of the Return of the Jedi, right?
yeah,
Like he's trying to seduce him to the dark side. There's
yeah.
fortunately nothing sexual about the Emperor's approach to Luke, right
No,
there, and
no.
that's exactly the kind of
Yeah.
seduction
Mhm.
that is. So yeah, I really, yeah, no, I we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
We're hopeful. Corey's also
I'm
hopeful for
hopeful.
the show.
Well,
Yes.
that's it. It's, it's gonna be awesome until it's not. I mean, like I'm just gonna. It's right now. It only exists in my imagination,
Yeah.
so it's awesome in my imagination. There
Yeah.
are so many
Same.
ways in which it could be great,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna wait until I'm absolutely compelled to dislike it before I'm gonna get all worried about it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Good. Okay, so we covered the blurry image. We'll talk about Amazon's policy. I mean, I work in marketing myself. I do big worldwide campaigns, and I'm always like, but what is their strategy here? I don't understand the strategy. But then, I'm working for cars, so that is very different. I want to sell cars. Amazon has another approach on this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So today we're here to talk about, the she wolves of